This is the Realty Classroom Podcast, episode number 159. It's all just organized common sense. Are you a real estate agent with an entrepreneurial spirit who wants to turn your job into a business without sacrificing your lifestyle, but you just can't seem to find the right plan or any plan to help you get there? Hey, you're definitely in the right place if that's you. I'm Danny Griffin, the founder of the Realty Classroom and the host of this podcast. Now, to help you take immediate action to get started in the right direction, I've created a free strategic plan for you that's waiting at freeagentgift.com. Go get your copy of it over there and you'll start thinking strategically, which I wish somebody had told me to do a long time ago. All right. In this episode, I want to cover, it's all just common sense. And what do I mean by this? Well, again, I like to share in these podcast episodes my life. It's a little transparency into what it is like to be me as a broker, owner, and a coach. Two different businesses, Griffin Realty Group, also now becoming known as the Griffin across the country. And that's why this subject comes up here today in the Realty Classroom as a coach. So, in that body of work, I've worked really hard to come up with some very simple plans. I actually share one of those plans with you at Free Agent Gift. You can see the way that my brain thinks. And I call it chunking up, simplifying, so that I can give you my best what to do information for free. And that fits the whole mantra in my life to try to be a person for others. So I've spent a long time doing that. 21 years to be exact in the context of real estate, and really in the last 12 years, really dug in on trying to simplify and serve and think, we're always as agents, we're always trying to figure out the next greatest edge that we can get from the business, the leads that we can get. I just don't think we spend enough time thinking about the people that we're serving and what would serve them. How could we serve them better? So needless to say, over time, I felt that organizing the common sense of how a property gets sold, how a property is purchased, and how an agent builds a business. Those are the three major pillars of this business: sellers, buyers, and agents that deal with sellers and buyers. And so my philosophy of chunking up just said, look, if I were to get up above the process as an expert, I've done it for so long, forget about what all the diatribe is from this guru or that one. Just let's get up above it. How does the business work? How does it actually work? Well, I started to think about, for example, sellers. Now let's talk about organized common sense and what it looks like. So I started to think, if I could on one page just make a picture, 5th grade level, so that somebody could just look at the selling process and understand it, what would that look like? So I just it almost looks like a life preserver, right? And so I made this circular motion where there were stages, and I talked about pricing. And a lot of people said to me, well, that's not what we do. We go in there and we tell them all about us. And they say, am I the right guy? And if I'm the right guy, voila, I'm going to open up, Pandora's box and tell you all the secrets. That didn't vibe with me. And it wasn't common sense, and it wasn't of service. It was effective. It works because it is an organized presentation, but the lack of being about them and willing to give away my best information about how the business works and what to do just said, okay, look, if you are a seller, the logic and the common sense of this is that you must talk about price. If you get the price wrong, especially in a tough market, it's all over, because then there's no use of talking about how to recondition the property, how to stage the property. Then, and only then, how to deal with marketing. You see, pricing, conditioning, staging all precedes marketing. That's the logic. That's the common sense. That's how you get there. That's how we get there as agents. We all do. And then once that's done, this market making or communication stage with buyers or sellers are coming because they're responding to the marketing and they're giving us feedback, and we can go back and make adjustments. And that will lead to offers and negotiation and ultimately a closing process. Common sense. That's all it is. It's common sense, but it's organized. And not only is it organized for the consumer, it's simplified in an infographic form. Yes, I've done a magazine form that hits 4 bullet points in each of the 7. So there's a magazine copy that goes deeper for those that really want to learn. And there are a ton of them, it turns out. But it's just all commonsensical. So how does that relate to this podcast? Well, I've had enough of developing it, and I want to proliferate it. I want to take the concepts that I've done and try them in the context of a brokerage across the country. By empowering the agents through training them on these plans, these simple plans, coaching them against them, meaning when they go out and they talk to a buyer or a seller, you can coach them against it and their plan for their success. And the only way to do that is to attract some investment capital. You need some capital. At some point in time, you need investors. If you want to accelerate and you want to go, there's only a certain point in time where, as a solopreneur, financing yourself gets tiresome. And so I brought it to a couple of folks that I know, one very, good friend, and I gave them everything, and they came back, and the tenor of the conversation in one of our meetings was, this is really good. You get the chills just thinking about it, because being an entrepreneur, believing in this stuff, you can get on an island and you can get very lonely on that island, and you just have to have a lot of self-belief, and you just have to have faith, and you have to drive. But when somebody comes along and validates it like that, you get excited, because then you think, well, maybe I can serve a lot more people. And so the comment was, look, I don't want to be insulting, but this is nothing more than organized common sense, and that's why I think it's really good. And I said, thank you. Really, I was relieved. I get the chills just thinking about it. Thank you. I've been trying to do that. And my reply was, is a burger and fries complicated? If somebody's hungry and they get their protein and they get their carbs, isn't that just kind of what McDonald's did? Just organize the common sense that you want to be predictably in this place where you can go and you can get fed in a very predictable, simple way, and it's common sense. I drive up, I ask for my burgers and fries, maybe throw in a Coke because I'm thirsty, a bottle of water, whatever it might be. How much is it? Go on the back, and boom, common sense. It's easy. I don't have to look out and have a very complicated decision-making process. And look, there's a place for complication. There's a place for more sophisticated, deeper, whatever it might be. But in this business, there's just so much overcomplication. We're leaving the consumer so lost. Why not use organized common sense in the form of simple plans that can be given away to empower the consumer? So guess what? Our industry gets a little bit of a better vision of who we are. We're looked upon as low on the totem pole for professionalism. And it's because we just won't stop taking. And we just won't organize in a commonsensical way and serve. So I got validated this week, and it felt good. The next point here is, how does that all happen? How would it happen for you? I mean, I know you don't want to spend 21 years and a lot more before that, trying to, like Steve Jobs says, you can't connect the dots looking forward. So you have to really live this. So what if I could just give you a shortcut? What if I could just give you advice? By the way, that's what this podcast is, wink, wink. Every week I try to give you the shortcut so you don't have to live the long, arduous path that I did. So the second point is systematizing. Systematizing is the act of organizing the common sense in the form of what actually works. So think about that. As I did the business, listing a property, getting it all ready, selling it, taking it through to closing and creating a past client, all I did was say, if I could get up above, this is a metaphor or an analogy I use all the time. If I were in the glass room above the assembly line at Ford's factory early in the day, I would be looking down at the actual system that produces the car. And I would begin to name it and organize it, and that would help me manage it much more simply. Imagine a chaotic assembly line where one thing doesn't connect to the next and you have to walk across the room, subtle things, simple things, right? This chaos, it's all commonsensically happening, okay? Let's put the lug nut on this wheel, right? It's not rocket science, but the way that everything works in a certain order is the act of systematizing. When you systematize, when you see the whole, and a system is a whole. Let's think about that as the whole. So I have to go down into the mess of my business, or I'm starting from scratch, and I have to understand that eventually it's sort of that whole food moment. It's that whole system moment. That's the whole system. If you could, let's use Whole Foods as an example now that it's owned by Amazon. If you could get up above it, and that's probably why Amazon bought it in part, they had a good system. They had a good system. And you get up above that and you can see not just the produce aisle, you can see the whole thing. how things are laid out, how the client moves through, all common sense. I just make shopping for me easy. My wife can't stand the shopping. I've been the shopper and the cook for quite some time, but at least a good grocery store with a good system makes it easy, makes it predictable. And they continue to organize what actually works so that you can go through and you can shop so that it's easy and you can spit out the other end a happy past client each time. Okay? So that's all it takes. You want to organize common sense. Good, but think system. Next, here's the tripping point. And this is a toughie. This is the head stuff, and you know that's my specialty, so here we come with the head stuff. Intellectual insecurity. This is something I'm sure somebody else has said it before in the history of time, nothing new under the sun, but intellectual insecurity is something I coined to remind myself. It's like a keyword. Am I having an intellectually insecure moment? Meaning, am I closed-minded to new information? Am I not seeing what's right in front of me? That intellectual insecurity demeans my ability to serve even high-end clients in a simple way. So the reason why most of us won't organize the common sense, put it in a productized form, and serve with it is because we are intellectually insecure. And let's take an example of where you might walk into somebody's house to potentially list it, and you know that they're a professor at a college, that they are super academically educated. And you get insecure about that. You believe that you're not as smart as the professor. So you come in and you get all insecure. And so now when you're insecure, you tend to get defensive, argumentative, because intellectual insecurity, when it takes over, I think some insecurity makes you prepare better and it's, that's good, but don't demean your ability to serve. You see, so what how somebody judges you when you are ultimately a true servant? So what? So what if the professor, thinks that you're not their equal and that they feel far superior intellectually to? So what? Who cares? Just stick to what you know is universally the sound, commonsensical way that every seller should be educated about how selling a property really works. And a lot of you will get bullied or steamrolled. I understand. We always seem to be training and coaching around the D personality. If you've never heard of the DISC personality test, Google it. It's easy. D, dominant. I, influential. S, steady. C, compliant. Those are the 4 major personality types, right? And so it's that D bully we perceive, we're always afraid of. And so we get so intellectually insecure that this person's going to steamroll us and beat us up and we're so dumb. That's all insecurity. So also following or coming around with organized common sense in the form of infographics, 1 page, stupid simple. I want you to think that simply for a second here with me today, because to help you grasp this concept of what I achieved, even at the highest end, it took me years, by the way, to learn how to simplify into 1 infographic, right? I did it a long time ago, but now I really get it. So imagine me, because I do, and I still do the job in the houses. I walk into multi-million-dollar properties, and I can think of 3 right in my face right now. In my mind, I just saw one I was just in 48 hours ago. I walked in with my package of information, and my number 1 tool that I'm going to use with that person is to say, first of all, you go for the nickel tour, let me see the property. You start to get the story of the property, because that's most important to people, is that you understand what the story is. Everybody understands. They'll give you a pass on learning the product. You don't know that they had copper nails until you dig in, right? So when you start, that was a little sarcasm. So when you go into this and you go through this process, wonderful. So let me just look at this. Before I came over, the reason for selling is what again? I always want them connected to why I'm even there. Because if I'm going to hit you with common sense and a plan, I want you to have a real reason why, or it's not going to matter. And we're going to fail together. So we already know they have a why before I go to the house. We also know the motivation level is high. Usually on a scale of 1 to 10, it's a 9 to 10, unless there's some problem I'm coming in I can solve first to help them get there. But we walk in and we go for, this was a $3.5 million expired listing. And so we go for this, and it's spectacular. Awesome picturesque view. Multiple lots are attached to it, so I have to make some adjustments to my math. A beautiful boathouse, fabulous deep water dock, and there's a show outside going on between wildlife and boats and et cetera. It's fabulous. And I know that no matter what happens, I'm going to talk to them against, meaning I'm going to frame our conversation against that one infographic, $3.5 million. And I'm going to do it against that. And I'm going to say, just tell me, how far did you get in the last one? So they get to have that cathartic moment about how far they did and didn't get. Well, clearly, the more they talk, the common sense plan says, well, you didn't get very far in this pinwheel. So something was wrong up at the top, the price. And here's what everybody's afraid of. I said, where did you start? And I had it in front of me, but where did you start? 3, 7 and change. Okay. How did you get there? So now we just start to get well, we were told that. And in fact, we were begging the agent to lower it. And so, you're like, oh my gosh, that's common sense. Get the theme? You need some math, and I have some with me. So let's look at it. We'll benchmark it. And we'll figure it out. So after doing some analysis on the math and whatnot, we know we have a pricing problem. And they did reduce it down to the 3.5, but it was never really on the market for 3.5 because it only was there for 2 days. It rained and it was a long weekend. So I know where I'm starting. And see, that will give me a reasonable starting place because the math supported it and there we were. And we're having a simple conversation. But the reason is because the plan or the infographic is in front of us to keep us from going outside the guardrails and into did we like Danny well enough to give him a shot? That's still at play. But I'm showing them the certainty of a process in understanding it, even though she was sophisticated to the extent that she's been in the mortgage business a long time. But she knows selling her own property is difficult, and they wanted real guidance. And so that simple plan was the way that we discussed it. All right, here's the last point here. In the end, everybody likes a plan that is simple and effective. From the beginning seller and buyer, to the new agent, to the veteran who needs organization in their business as an agent, to the highest end of sellers. Even when they're being represented by their assistants and you're not even really talking to the owners, they can bring it back in a simple way. You see, simple is like the bone structure that we have. What's complex is the differentiation that goes on top of us. Then throw in how we look on top of that cosmetically with our clothes and how we coif our hair and all that good stuff, right? Makeup, no makeup. That's all what goes on top of what is essentially a simple bone structure. And so that's what holds everything together is that simple commonality, that bone structure. Now, I'm not saying that I have exactly the perfect words in my 7 steps or my 6 steps for buyer or my 7 plus a bonus for my agents, but it's pretty darn well close to the immutable laws of the way selling a house works, buying a house works, and becoming a successful agent works. And people are magnetically attracted to that. Not everybody, but a person who feels relief from being supported by a good bone structure. Okay? So keep that in mind. Let me go back and review these points here. In this episode, we're talking about it's all just organized common sense. What is? Well, my business at least, and I know that because number one, from the eyes of an investor is where that comment came from this week. So this is really good. And I don't mean to be insulting, but it's just organized common sense. And I said, bravo, finally. 21 years of hard work and somebody that really matters to me really gets me. I felt validated and no longer lonely. All right. 2, systematizing the act of organizing what actually works. Okay. Systematizing the act of organizing what actually works is how I came up with all these infographics. You do the same. So in other words, everything that's common sense, if you put it into a system, that's how I got organized. You can do the same. Next, intellectual insecurity demeans your ability to serve even the highest end of clients in a simple way. So you see, you might look at this and say, well, I'm not going to do that because that wouldn't work. That's all your mind gremlins. That's all your intellectual insecurity where these cognitive distortions say, well, that works for him because he's done it for 21 years. Fifth graders do this better than I do without all the 21 years worth of stuff, right? And lastly, in the end, trust me from experience, everybody that will really matter to you, the people you really want to do business with, they will get you because they like a plan that is simple and, most importantly, effective. And if it's immutable laws on how the business works, it will be effective. Yes, of course, you'll have to make some adjustments, but it's effective. Let me summarize it this way. My notes. This week, an investor, after having looked at my system and plans for serving sellers, buyers, and agents, said, "This is really good, organized common sense." Now, understand the person speaking, the person that said that to me, is a very highly educated, think Ivy League and think MBA Ivy League, successful person who appreciates the straightforward and easy to understand approach of any business, right? So all your perceptions about these intellectual people and what matters to them, you're wrong. They like simple. So if that's the case, then let's stop being so intellectually insecure about simply serving even the highest end clients as well as our agents if you have them, and make their lives easier by sharing our simple, effective plans. All right, remember, you can take immediate action and get started in the right direction like this we're talking about here today with organized common sense, because that's what I have waiting for you at freeagentgift.com. It is organized common sense in there. It is the agent plan for agents that are not at the Griffin, just more of a general version of the same content, general version branded under the Realty Classroom. It is what I did to organize common sense. So when you get it, don't be all intellectually insecure and say, "Oh, this is stupid simple." Yes, it is, and that's the point. Also, don't forget you can subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen. We'd also love to hear from you, so please comment on our posts so we know what your biggest challenges are. And thanks for listening. Remember this, nobody's coming for you, so go get to work on your business, and we will see you in the next episode to help you do just that. And just a little footnote here, this episode is dedicated to my dog Louie, who I lost and I loved. So I appreciate you being here, and I came here for you to help me get my mind off my pal, but this is dedicated to him.